y'all, welcome back to the channel. Glad you can join me on this video here. Hope this video helps you out. The sound you heard at the beginning of the video on startup was the water pump failing on this car. Unfortunately, this car only has 50,000 miles, and yes, it's 8 years old, but I feel it's a little bit premature for the water pump to actually give out at this point. So I was expecting water pumps to last a little bit over 100,000 miles on these cars, so kind of interesting that it did fail. So anyway, we're gonna do a simple fix on here. We're not gonna do a full flush on here. The car only has 50,000 miles, but we do have to drain all the fluid, all that good stuff. We're gonna replace the water pump. We're gonna replace the dry belt for that. We're gonna replace the thermostat, and we're gonna replace all the necessary seals to get this thing back up and running. So let me show you. We're gonna go, of course, Ford parts are supposed to be the absolute best. Not totally sure what happened to the one on this car, but we're going to go back to Motorcraft on the water pump. If you don't have access to this, I know Milling makes a pump that's fairly good for this vehicle, so look forward to that. Other things you're going to need is, in my situation, the dry belt. So we're going to do a dry belt Motorcraft as well. Part number's there if we need it. We're going to replace the thermostat because we're here already. You might as well. Ford's thermostats are pretty elite when it comes to the Coyote engines, so we're going to go with that too. So here's what it looks like here. So we can get you the part number. Yeah, there we go. It's the thermostat. And once we go along, we'll remove it off the package and I'll show you the rest. So just in case you don't get it right away. Different gaskets. Here's a gasket I'm going to use here from Motorrad. This one's for the thermostat housing, so we're going to need this. Another one we're going to need is this little tiny seal here, and I'll show you where this goes. It's basically for the heater hose element. One more seal we're going to replace. This is the gasket for the thermostat housing to the water pump, so this one's needed. Here is the part number. So here, I'm not sure if I'll show you the part number on this little guy here. Let me get this one. So here's that little small seal. So here's the part number for that one. There we go. So just keep in mind, my car is a 2015 Ford Mustang GT, of course. This does apply to multiple Coyote engines before 2015 and after 2015. So just keep that in mind. It's pretty much the same thing. I'll always look for part numbers yourself with Ford as well, just in case they change something along the line. So, you know, sometimes videos don't age very well, so we get to the next generations of Coyote engines and all that good stuff. So always do your homework and check. The very first thing we're going to do, though, is we need to drain the coolant in this system. And so to do that is, I'll show you here in a second, we're going to have to drain it from the radiator is your best bet. There's a valve there. It's on the passenger side. So let's go down there real quick. I'll show you. All right, so first thing you got to do is you're going to have to remove this belly pan off the front of the car, like completely. So it's a little bit time consuming. There's a bunch of screws and plastic fasteners, and the plastic fasteners could be a pain to get off. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. So we're going to go on the passenger side here, right underneath, and let's see if I can get you a good view without moving the camera too much here. But right under here, you're going to see that valve, and that's the radiator valve right here, or your petcock, whatever you want to call it. So this here, you can put a hose onto it and drain it into a bucket. So that's going to be your first step. You're going to open this up and drain it into a bucket. Open up your coolant reservoir up on top, and this thing will flow all the way. So we're going to empty out as much as you possibly can. Now you're going to need some type of collection pan, because once we remove the water pump, there's going to be some additional fluid that's going to come out of here. So just keep one handy. For me, I like to do these jobs outside, not in the garage, just to avoid a mess. So just in case you need to clean up, you can actually water this down with a water hose, just in case you get a little bit of spillage on the concrete or wherever you're working. So so we're going to go back on top. We're going to have to remove the intake. Unfortunately for me, I have an aftermarket intake, but all the connections are basically stock the same. So it's pretty much the same scenario, just in case you have your stock intake system. So let's go back up there. Alright, so one more thing that's worth mentioning is I'm going to use the Motorcraft yellow concentrated. I like to buy the concentrated stuff because it's a little bit cheaper than the pre-diluted ones, basically. So I went ahead and just bought 2 gallons of it, and then 2 gallons of distilled water. And then I like to pre-mix my stuff. So I'm down here in the south, so 50-50 is my mix. But if you guys are in a colder climate most of the year, you want to go like 60 antifreeze and 40 distilled water. So keep that in mind. You're also going to need about 13 to 14 quarts of this stuff. So that's why I went with I got 2 gallons just to be on the safe side. Alright, since we're here on top, since we got the coolant draining at this point, it's a good time to actually come up here and start taking apart all this top, pieces that we need to take off, basically, to get access down to the water pump area. So what we're going to do is just remove the top cover. We're going to remove our intake, remove whatever hoses are on top that are needed. So we'll just start from doing that first. The first thing we got to do is make sure that you have full access. So what I'm going to do is just take off these factory hoses. They're going to be the same. Yeah, so all these connections, they're all push in. So you push in this tab and you pull out. You want to kind of push in the tab, pull it toward the intake, and then it's just slide right out. In my case, I got these aluminum ones, so they're a little bit tighter than stock. So maybe it takes a little bit more to get them out. So we'll get these off first, if I can. There we go. And then we've got this big breather hose here. There should be a little, let me see if I can, there's not a way I can show you, but I'm going to put my finger around here. You can feel a little latch. Like there's a little plastic in the latch, so you push the latch this way, basically, and then it should slide right out. So I can show you with that latch. Here it is, right here. See that little latch? That's what gives it to let go. So there's that piece there. You just move that on the side. All this stuff is fine. We can probably just arrange it where it's just out of the way for now, just like that. And then I'm just going to move over to these small return hoses to the reservoir. We're going to remove the reservoir completely. Just gives us some room as well. That way it gives me a chance to actually clean out this reservoir too. So I just move these hoses over, or these clips. There we go. So if these hoses get stuck on you, I have these pliers here. They're made for hoses. You can use some regular pliers or whatever you got just to help break them loose. But this thing seems to do a good job without hurting the actual turning the hose up, basically. Alright, so now the intake, we're just going to unloosen this right off the throttle body here. Is our easiest bet. Like I said, this is the same as factory too. It's actually a factory piece that transferred over to this kit. So we should have that fairly loose. And then we're going to disconnect the sensor here. There's a little red tab at the bottom here. So you want to pull that tab out. And then you should be able to press the sensor or the connector off the sensor. There we go, just like that. So see that tab? It'll go in once it's connected. Okay. And then you might have a little connection off your box here, which I already disconnected too. So we'll just move this out of the way, and I should be able to get this intake off, and then we'll get to what we're trying to get to here. Alright, now you can see with the intake out of the way, it gives us plenty of room here to actually work. First thing I want to do is I do want to remove this reservoir over here. So we have this one hose here that connects over here from the supply line from the reservoir, basically. So we gotta remove this one. Need some better pliers here. Yeah, I know there's better pliers out there that help do this job, but hey, this is what I got, so it is what it is. Just gotta move it off just a slight bit. Alright. So we're gonna break that loose. There we go. And then this reservoir, let's see if you can actually see it. There we go. So it's just 2 bolts here on top. They're 10 millimeter. Get these guys out of the way. Maybe we should do it faster. How's that? Work faster, not harder, right? So we can get this out. Just be careful. This one still has fluid in it, slightly. I put my bolts back in here so I don't lose them. And so now you got tons of room to work. So it's kind of the beauty of it. Now I'm not going to replace all the hoses. You know, I'll probably replace these hoses. You know, I probably should, but I'll probably end up replacing them about 100,000 miles or so. So unless you have any cracks or they're starting to rot, then, you know, fill them all out, replace them. You don't have to do this over again, but at some point I will. So anyway, all right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to remove this heater hose pipe. This goes to our heater unit inside the back to the firewall there to the car, so it, you know, goes to your heater core basically. So I'm going to remove this. It has clips right here, both sides. You push in, push down on it, should release it. You should be able to wiggle it off. So the key is when you push them in, we want to kind of push down so it kind of breaks the seal a bit. Give it a wiggle. So you see it. You just gotta be patient with these, and they'll come right off. Just gotta be very patient with them. That's all I can tell you to get these things off. Be patient with them. Remember, they're made out of plastic, so they can become brittle or they can just break. So just be patient with this. So I'm just going to move this off to the side. I'm going to leave that little clip there. No big deal. What I'm going to probably do is lubricate this clip when we put it back on. So next thing we got to do, it gives us room for this hose clamp back here. We're going to have to remove this one. We're going to have to pull that forward. But before I do that, let's go ahead and loosen the thermostat housing off the water pump here. Alright, so we got 2 8mm bolts we got to remove. So this one and this one. So those 2 out, we can probably break it real easy off. Remember, it's going to leak. You're still going to leak coolant at this point, okay? So I'm just going to separate it, make sure I have enough, make sure it's loose right in here, basically is what I'm trying to do here. So just kind of wiggle a little bit. Then we're going to go ahead and get this hose clamp and slide it off that pipe. This one's going to be a little bit hard to get off. We're going to wiggle it and hopefully get it off. We might even get something behind it to help break the seal. So it's in a tight spot. It's a pretty heavy duty clamp, so you know, choose your weapons as needed, basically. So I'm going to try these first. I might get to them. What I would like to do, because these are Ford clamps, if I can get them to clip to each other, it'd be great. Alright, so what I ended up doing is getting this thing a little bit further into the middle of the pipe, the clamp. So now I should be able to twist a little bit better here. I think it should probably, there we go, slid right off. And you can see the problem here. There's some corrosion already right here on top. So we're going to have to clean that up before we put the hose back on. Make sure the hose is clean as well. So all that's going to have to happen before we proceed. So looks like the hose is fine. But we got to clean anything up. We want all our surfaces to be perfectly clean. So next thing I want to do real quick is I want to remove this part of the thermostat housing. So there's 2 bolts on one on each side. Same thing, they're 8mm. So I'm just gonna reach around these and just break it loose while we have this together. And they shouldn't be tight. The housing's aluminum, so you can't put a whole lot of torque on aluminum. So I'll get this off here. Get one side off. I'm just going to separate them apart so we can move the hoses out of the way, basically. Of course, we're going to replace the thermostat and the seal for that. Let's see if I can reach around here and reach this other bolt. There we go. Let me see if I can shorten this up. It's a little bit in a weird spot here, so I can raise it up. Kind of on the back side. It's just an awkward spot to put it. Alright, so I got the 2 bolts off. Sorry, I was out of view there for a second. I'm going to separate these slowly. And the reason being is I want to show you how the thermostat sits in here in the housing. So you see right here, here's your breather. That breather is going to be on top. So it's always on top. So remember where that's at. Just keep a mental note of that. Take a picture, whatever you got to do. Alright, so at this point I'm able to get this whole assembly and just move it out of my way. I'm just going to move it on top. So it gives us all this clearance here that we need. This hose, I'm just going to tie it. You can probably bungee this hose down out of the way. It's not too bad of a problem. You can actually move it. So at this point, we're going to loosen up these 3 bolts off the pulley. We're going to leave the belt on. The belt's going to give us enough tension to break these bolts. Alright, so these 3 are 10mm, and I'm just going to break them loose. That's all I'm going to do. I barely broke it loose, so let me show you something real quick. When I say the water pump failed, I mean, this thing shouldn't have any movement at all whatsoever. You see all that movement? It means the seals and the bearing failed completely in this thing. So this is not from me loosening the bolts. This is the actual water pump moving. So, alright, so the next thing we got to do here is we're going to take off the dry belt, take a picture of how it's routed or a mental image, whatever is good for you, right? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to find the idler pulley here. The bolt on the idler pulley is a 15mm. All we're going to use is a socket for this and a breaker bar, or in my case I'm going to use an old torque wrench that doesn't work no more. So all we're going to do is we're going to get it on there and we're just going to pull up on it. It should give us enough slack here for the belt to come off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under here and grab the belt. I'm going to take it off the water pump. I'm going to let go. And let's see if we can loosen this guy up real quick. Okay, there we go. And so here's the belt. We're going to replace this. So like I said, keep in mind where this goes. I'm going to go ahead and remove it completely off. Chances are that this seized at some point. You can tell how loose this is. Check this out, guys. That's crazy. So it could have, that belt in my case is bad. So this is actually a good time to actually clean off all your pulleys and check the bearings in them too. Making sure that all of them spin freely. There's no, it doesn't feel funny. Of course they don't screech and all that good stuff. And keep in mind, once we put all this back together, there's still coolant that's kind of pulling here and kind of dropping on our pulleys and our belts. So once we got everything together, we're going to have to hose this all off, okay? You don't want coolant on your belts for sure. So I know you can probably put a towel around the bottom belt. This is the belt for your air conditioner. We're not going to be replacing this, but if we're here, you know, if you need to, go ahead. That'll probably be a good idea. Just go ahead and do that. But in my case, it's not. So, but I was saying, you can cover it up, but you're still going to get coolant on it. So the best way is get your garden hose and just water it down. So next thing is I'm going to go ahead and take off this pulley. Remember, we broke it loose. These things should come right out now. By the hand, we're going to really use this pulley. Of course, if it's damaged, you're going to have to replace it. But it shouldn't be, unless your case is different than mine. So here we go. I'm gonna go and clean all these parts up before I put them back on as well. So it's kind of a good habit to have. Let's see what this feels like. Yeah, tons of play. Yeah, you can see how noisy it is. It's crazy. And let's see, pulleys are good. Everything's good. How about alternator? Alternator pulley sounds good. Nice and smooth. So we're in good shape here. Next thing we're going to do is remove this bolt here. This is the fill tube, and then this portion here went to your heater core basically. So we got to remove this off the water pump. So we're going to get this off. I believe it's 8mm. Let's see if I can crack it off with a 1/4 inch. A lot of this assembly, you can use a 1/4 inch on these because it's going into aluminum. So you don't have to actually bring out the big tools. The torquing sequence I'm going to give you once we reinstall these, very minimal. I mean, we're talking inch pounds here. So take this guy off. You see how easy it is. Just a 1/4 inch ratchet takes it right off. All right. I'm going to put this into a different spot here. So this thing, I'm going to give it a wiggle. It should pull right up. You got to wiggle it off, of course. There we go. Now, here's a watch out for. Remember that little tiny gasket I have? It's this guy here. So we're going to have to replace this. Of course, we're going to clean all these parts off. Make sure it's nice and clean for install. So we'll get this cleaned up. Next thing all we got to do is actually release that pump. It's going to be 4 bolts. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do here, and it's the final thing, I'm going to wear gloves for this because you're most likely going to get antifreeze in your hands. You actually don't want that. It'll make your fingers look like you're a Swamp Thing. So, and plus it feels awful all day. You shouldn't get antifreeze on your hands. Anyway, so we're going to remove the water pump. It's 4 bolts, and they're 10mm. We'll start at the bottom one here. I guess one good tip is to actually clean off your bolts. It's probably better just to replace these, but if you can clean them up, that would be just fine. So at this point, I should be able to break the water pump off of the engine here. See if we can get it to break loose. We got a pry bar. I just want to slightly pry it. Keep in mind, coolant is going to spill down, so make sure you still have your bucket underneath the car, which I do. I'm going to use a small pry bar. I don't want to abuse it. I just want to kind of just barely convince it to come out. That's what I mean. There's going to be tons of fluid that comes out of there, or coolant that comes out of there. This thing's stuck on there pretty good, guys. So what I have to do is actually wiggle it from both sides, like multiple times off camera, just to kind of help break it loose. Oh no, but it's finally out. See all the fluid, all the coolant came out. You see, like, I mean, it's a pretty bad shape. It's making a whole lot of noise. I don't know if the camera picks this up. You can see basically the damage there. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed. I figured Ford's parts would last a whole lot longer than that. And maybe I just got a bad one, who knows. But anyway, I'm going to clean everything up here. We're going to get the hose. We're going to clean everything off. Make sure everything's nice and neat. And then we'll start installing the new pieces. Alright, all I'm going to do is just get the hose Give it a light spray down. I want to get all that coolant off of all our surfaces, especially the belts and the pulleys. Get these all cleaned up. What's this little piece? A little tiny piece here. It must have came off the pump. Something that fell, a little metal piece. Interesting. I might have to look that up. But I just want to clean everything up, make sure every surface is nice and clean for new seals. Clean off all your idler pulleys, of course. Get that belt down there really freaking clean. I didn't get nothing on the Ulta there, so I'm not going to bother there. I'm going to have to clean these pulleys up a little bit more. There's a little bit of gunk that got on here, but nothing big. So that's pretty much it. Just clean up your work. Clean up this piece here that we cleaned up. I cleaned off this nozzle here already. Got all the gunk off. This is kind of like the high point. This is kind of like the hottest part of the cooling system is this piece here. So that's why you kind of get buildup off of that hose. Just make sure everything's nice and clean. All right, and we'll start prepping for the new parts. All right, so time for the new water pump. One thing to note: make sure you do have your seal all the way around here. What you want to do with this seal is get a some fresh coolant here, or antifreeze, and you want to get a little bit of it. It's going to act as a lubricant. You want to lubricate this ring all the way around, the whole entire thing. Lubricate it really, really well. This way, when it goes in there, it'll slide on. So it just acts as a lubricant. That's all it is. So just put it all the way around like so. Make sure it's in there real good, because if you put this on, it rips. It's going to leak. So I'm going to get in here so we can get it lined up. See if I can get it lined up perfectly here. Remember, the tolerances is really, really tight, so it's important to get them on. They're going to push on. You can't really actually, you can't exactly do this to it, basically. The tolerance, like I said, the tolerance is real tight to get this on, so it's got to push in there. There we go. Like I said, be patient with it. We don't want to rip it. We don't want to rip that seal. Okay. And so, of course, your bolts. I cleaned mine up. And so we don't put nothing on these. No Loctite. No anything. So make sure these things are nice and clean. I'm gonna snug them down by hand real quick first. Just get them started. There's gonna be a torquing sequence for these. We'll get to that here in a second. I want to make sure I get them. I like to start them by hand, all the way down by hand, so I can feel if there's any obstruction getting the bolt in. If there is, you want to back it out and possibly clean your bolt or figure out what's exactly happening. You don't want to cross thread these in there. If you do that, it's an aluminum, and it's could be expensive or a tough fix. So always by finger tight first. If you can get it all the way down by finger tight, you're golden. See if you can see that hole. In my case here, they're going in very easily. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snug them. I'm not going to put any torque on them yet. I just want to snug them up. I want to make sure that the water pump is set into the engine. So this will help snug them up. Just that little bit. There'll be a little bit of spacing. I'm just going to kind of go around slowly. I can still feel the water pump kind of going into place here. There we go. There's this last one here in the bottom. And I'm going to go back around after this one. I just want to make sure, there we go. See, it popped in. Just that little tiny bit that needed to go further. That's why it's important to lubricate that, that gasket. It's a little bit tight here. Now I'm not killing these on. I'm barely putting any pressure on them. Okay. So next is the torque sequence for this. Let me go ahead and grab our 1/4 inch torque wrench. We'll get these things torqued down. All right. So these 4 bolts are going to torque down to 177 inch-pounds. Okay. So that'll be your first step. The second step is to torque them down to, well, it's actually not a torque number. You're going to actually go 60 degrees. So wherever it is, at that point, go 60 degrees more, and that's it. So they don't actually give you a torque spec, it's that. So you can have a fancy torque wrench that can do that to you, which I do have one, but I'm not going to use it for this thing here because not everybody has one. So we can go old school, back to grade school, and use a little protractor to kind of give you an idea where 60 degrees is from 0. So that'll kind of give you a good idea to torque these down. Remember, 177 inch-pounds ain't much. Keep that in mind. Okay, we're there. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch my tool real quick. Remember, you want to give yourself a good idea. So how you do this? Well, you can put it on a piece of paper for one, or you can have something like this, number 2. But see, if you can get it like in a certain spot that you like it, you say, okay, you can line this up. You say 60 degrees is right here where this glove is. Remember, it's going to be, you're going to be kind of close to the ballpark, but it's going to be enough. So 60 degrees is about right here. You can keep the eye memory. We're just going to rotate it to that point. There it is. Just like that. So we're going to do all of them just like that. Very simple. See what this puts us. It's going to put this like right here. So right here. So I'm going to eyeball it right here. Come across. That's it. So basically, pretty simple. Pretty simple process here. You don't want to go over that. You don't want to strip anything either. So just keep that in mind. There we go. And then the last one here. So we're up and down here. You can rotate it wherever you want to if you need a better view of where you're trying to get to, you know. And that's it. That's it for that. So the next thing is we're going to start putting this this tube here for the overfill, or the coolant reservoir and the heater core there. Let's get that piece. Here's our tube all cleaned up. Remember, we're going to have to replace that gasket here. So I got a gasket, the new one here. You remember at the beginning of the video. What I'm going to do is we're going to do the same thing with this as well, is lubricate it. So let's get this little tiny guy out of here. It's extremely important, by the way. You will have a leak. So I'm going to do with this one, I'm just going to dip it in our coolant. Should lubricate that fairly well. I'm going to slip over our new tube, or our tube here. There. I'm going to make sure everything's lubricated. I want it very smooth when it goes in. So I put the bolt on here. Let me get that guy off. There we go. Swing it around. We just want to make sure it drops in nice and cleanly. There we go. Right there. I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt in. and everything. I'm gonna do it finger tight, everything. There we go. All right, so now we're going to torque that down. All right, so I'm going to torque this thing. It's hand tight, okay, but if you want the torque rating on this, it's probably about 89 foot-pounds or 89 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. You'll strip it at 89 foot-pounds. 89 inch-pounds. Oh, wrong socket. That's it. It's not much. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get our pulley. I've cleaned it off. It's been drying. I'll get this thing assembled. I'm just going to get these on finger tight. I'm just going to go finger tight at this point until we get the belt on there, and then we can torque them down. And that's fine there. We're good there. Alright, so the next thing we got to do is going to put our new belt. And then if we remember how this snake's on here, let's see. Well, I always start at the crank. A good measure. Go at the crank first. I hate new belts because they put them on those sleeves and it kind of makes them all rigid in a sense. So it's kind of annoying, to be honest with you, in my opinion. This goes around the alternator. This comes wrapped around. There's something. Oh, okay, wraps around this way. This goes around this pulley, and then this is going to go over the water pump like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it there. I'm going to get our breaker bar we had. Same thing as reverse, basically. And get the idler pulley down here. I can get it on. Come on, guy. There we go. And I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it over the water pump. And then I'm going to bring it around that pulley if I can here. Pull that around. And I'm going to wrap that around that pulley right there. And I'm going to let it go. And there it is. That's all it takes. Fairly simple. Just make sure everything's lined up. Everything's on there the way it should. And I think we're golden. Now we can torque these down. Alright, so we're going to torque these 3 bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Get them snug on first, and then we'll do the final torque. Go back around. And we're good there. Alright, next step is get our hoses back on. We have this main hose here with the thermostat. So we're going to do the thermostat housing, put a new thermostat, a new gasket. Keep in mind this side here, we've got to replace this gasket too. So let's go ahead and remove that. If you have a pick, that works. I have this little screwdriver, works just fine. I get this guy out. So that guy away. Let's set this down. Let's get the new gasket. It's this one here. That's the one that goes in the back side. Thermostat housing to water pump. So here it is here. Basically it just fits in this groove. It'll sit in there real real nicely too. So you can lubricate this too if you want. This one's not completely necessary to be lubricated, but just for peace of mind, I just put a little bit on there. Just a tad. That's it. One thing I'm going to do too is this hose here, I want it to go on smoothly, so you can get a little bit of coolant and just put some on the edge of this. Sorry, I took off my gloves, so I'll wear this plastic. It's fine, I guess. Just a little bit. Just on there. It'll help slide it on. Makes your life a whole lot easier, I'll tell you that. So, next thing is putting the new thermostat. So we got the new thermostat here. I'm sorry, here's the part number. As before. Get this guy out. Alright, so here we are. Remember the breather? Here's the breather here on top. It's a little bit different than we had before. This one's a ball type breather. This one goes on top, so it's going to go this way basically. So right up here on top is where you want it. Right here on top. See that? Right there. So we're going to put that there. And then of course we need the new gasket. Alright, so new gasket using motor rad. So we can get this guy. We'll put this up before here. Gasket comes around right here. Just like so. This one, you don't have to lubricate this one. You can if you want, but you don't have to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the two parts in. I'm going to hold one side. It's a little bit tricky. You got to hold one side and then the other. Let's see if I can get this thing untangled here. There we go. That bungee cord out of the way. There we go. So I'm going to hold this in place, make sure everything's there. Make sure it's right where I want it. Bring this piece over. And sandwich it right there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start the bolts that had. I'm going to start it by hand. Of course, there's other ways of doing this. This was a non-intrusive way. I didn't want to disconnect the hose off the thermostat. All these hoses, I didn't want to mess with these. Chances are, if you remove these, you could have a leak. And I didn't want to risk that of having to buy whole new hoses. So, if you have new hoses, then fine. You know, maybe a little bit easier for you. I just want to do the minimal effort at this point. So, just finger tight. We're going to torque this once I have everything set up, everything put together. Then we'll torque these. And it's a very small torque number as well. So I'll make sure it's snug in there. Everything's in good piece. There we go. I think we're good there. It's pretty tight. So I'm going to go ahead and push this hose on. See how it just glides on there now? Nice and easy. Make sure, keep in mind, we're going to line this thermostat housing up. Make sure your gasket's in there still. It should hold just fine. Snug it right up. Should go right to it. We'll get our two bolts for the thermostat housing. Start those up by hand. Get these nice finger tight. Alright, so these two bolts here, these are going to be 89 inch-pounds. I'm just going to snug them up first and then we'll torque it. Okay, we're good there. Let's torque this one, 89 inch-pounds. That's it. These two here for the housing for the thermostat replacement, those two bolts, same thing, 89 inch-pounds. It's basically hand tight with a 1/4 inch ratchet, basically. And it's kind of funny because once you torque them down, they still feel loose. But that's because you're going into aluminum, that's all it takes. Any more and you start stripping them. Alright, so next is putting that clamp on that hose real quick. hopefully it goes on a little bit easier than it came off, because it fought me. So hopefully we can get it right back on where it's supposed to go. And we got close. There we go. So we're good there. Check. Next thing is your heater hose. Get this guy out of the way. Your heater core hose here. I'm gonna lubricate this a bit. Let's see here. Alright, I'm just gonna lubricate this thing with a little bit of antifreeze, just slightly. That should do it, not much. I just want this thing to go down and seal up correctly. Push that in, that's it. They were good here, so that's good. I'll take this guy off. So, matter of fact, just go and check all your fittings, make sure everything's fine, do your final checks before we start assembling the rest of it. At this point here, I'm going to go ahead and put on the reservoir and then put on my intake, and then we'll start refilling the coolant. We'll take it up to operating temperature and then check for leaks. Alright, so now all we got to do now is refill the system with new coolant. Now this new yellow coolant does mix with the orange coolant. It's perfectly fine. It's designed to do so. So what we're going to want to do is we want to fill it up to at least this point here, this midpoint here. And then what we're going to do, once we get to that point, we're going to put the cap on. We're going to start the car and put the heater on high. So everything kind of flows through. We're going to get that to operating temperature. We're going to check for leaks during that time. We want to build pressure in the system, make sure there's no leaks. Now if you have a vacuum system of filling, hey, that's even better. But what I have here is I have the car elevated in the front, so it's still on jack stands in the front, or wheel ramps. And so this is the highest point of the thing, so I can get the air out of the system, basically. This is the way I'm going to do it. So once that's all done, come back here. You're gonna break the vacuum off, and then check where your level is and refill as necessary. So, and that's pretty much it. That's all that's left. Of course, the biggest thing is check for leaks. Anyway, hope this video helps you out. If it does, give me a thumbs up. If you have questions, let me know down in the comments. And thanks for watching.